Good evening, everybody. This is National Advisor Network, a Lexington group. Today is September 18, 2014, and we have a speaker from the company called ExecuTrain of Kentucky. Our speaker for today is Carla Bryan. She is a content implementation manager with ExecuTrain, and her information was in the first slide right here. Her website for a business, email, and a phone number is on the first slide. And my name is Irma Miller, CPA. I am a chapter leader here in Lexington, Kentucky. My information is on the second slide, the website for business and the email address. So with that, I am going to turn it into Carla. By the way, the topic for today, I'm sorry. I have to come back. The topic for today is going to be what is an access database and how can I use it to be more productive. So with that, I'm going to turn over the presenter to Carla Bryan. Just a moment.
Hello, can you hear me now? All right, so is it okay if I get started? Are you ready to record? All right. Well, hello, everybody. My name is Carla Bryan, as Irma said, and I work with ExecuTrain of Kentucky. And we're a company based in Lexington, Kentucky. We started out doing a lot of computer training, different classroom training, and throughout the years we've changed our focus a little bit. We do a lot of training, but we do a lot of other things too, which I'll talk about a little later. This is my contact information. I'll show this again at the end of the presentation in case you're interested in contacting me. So what I want to do today is talk a little bit briefly, give you an overview of what Access is. I hear a lot of people talking about, well, I have something in Excel and people keep telling me I need it in Access, but I don't really know what Access is. I don't understand what a database is. First of all, I want to say that Access is a Microsoft product, which is a very trusted company whose software has been around for years, has thousands of users using Access now. Access has a very small cost. I looked it up today, and it seems that it was around $105 to buy the Microsoft Access. And this product will interface with other Microsoft products, and a couple things I'm going to show you today. Also, Access is an easy-to-use tool for quickly creating an application to help you run your business. So for an example, you could learn the Access basics in a one-day class, and of course we would teach those classes here if you'd be interested. We have a basic, intermediate, advanced, and a VBA programming class, all having to do with Access. Or there are a lot of how-to-use videos available on the Microsoft website, and there are other websites that have videos as well. So creating a database in Access is going to be a lot quicker than having someone create software with another programming language, and a lot cheaper. And it's a very powerful tool that many businesses use to run their entire company on. I've developed Access databases, for example, for a publishing company that keeps track of all their book sales and invoicing, for an insurance company that keeps track of all their policies, and with a manufacturing company to help keep track of all their product inventory. Access is considered a relational database with a graphical user interface. And what this means is it has tables that relate to one another. So we might have an Access database that has a products table or products in one table, employees in another table, and then sales in another. And these tables would relate to one another. So in the sales table, you would have an employee ID number of who sold an item, and that would link to the employee ID field in the employee table. And that same record would have a product ID that would link to the product ID in a product table. So you can have many tables that relate to one another. So that's what a relational database is, which we're going to look at in a minute. And being a graphical user interface just means that we can make very nice, easy-to-use screens to input your information. And the last point I want to make is that an Access database is easily shared with others. So if you put an Access system on a shared drive, multiple users can open the very same file at the same time and be updating or getting information. Or you could have different people have different systems on their machines and say that I would have a system that would just allow me to update product information, and then someone else might have a database that would allow them to update confidential information on an employee. But we could both be linked to a third Access database that has just the tables in it. So there's a lot of ways to be creative in how you're going to structure your Access database. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to get out of my slideshow, and I'm going to open Access. And when you open Access, you are given the choice of whether you want to create a blank database to start from scratch, or you can use a template that you have saved previously. There are all kinds of Office templates out there that you can use to start a database with if you don't know where to start. So what I did for today's presentation is I actually used this template called Contacts. And I actually spent about 2 hours on it, inputting data and tweaking it a little bit to use the way I wanted it. And so in 2 hours, I have a database that I could use to input call lists and contacts. And I thought this might be something that might be relevant to you at your company that you could use. And they actually called it a desktop call tracker when I saved it. So over here to the left, I already have my file, so I'm going to open it up. And for now, I'm going to close this, and we're going to focus our attention over to the left where we have an object window open. So what I want you to notice, again, I'm just briefly going to go over how this Access system is designed. We have tables, we have queries, we have forms, and we have reports. And there are macros also. We're not going to talk about that today, but those are available. So let's very quickly look at the tables. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to open a table called Employees. And you'll see that this is simply a table that is keeping track of our employees. So we have the company name, the employee's last name, first name, email address, job title, business phone, home phone, and there are a lot more fields available for each employee. So this is called my data sheet view, and what I can do is I can switch to design view and show you how the person who designed this table did it. Is they just simply put in a field name and told it what kind of a field it is, if it was a text field, number field, date field, that kind of thing. So all of these field names are listed. If I wanted to add another field, I'd simply add another field name and tell it what the data type is, and it would be included in my table. So I'm going to switch back to data sheet view. And now I'm going to close this, and I'm going to open another table called calls. So this is a table that consists of calls that are to be made. So we have the title of who the call is supposed to be made to, And whoever put these records in, which I actually put these records in, I actually assigned them to one of the employees that was in that employee list. So you'll see here that I actually had a drop down that I could choose my employees to pick the one I want to assign this call to. The thing that I want you to see right now, that's something I'm going to talk about in a minute, is you'll see that each call has been assigned a status, and each call has also been assigned a category. And again, these were created from choosing something in the drop-down. So for every call, we could pick, is it a prospective client, is it an existing client, or is it a referral? So if I wanted to add a new record here, I could simply go to this new line and add a record. But, of course, I'm going to show you an easier way in a minute. I'm going to close this table. So that's just a brief overview of tables. We're going to skip queries for right now. We're going to look at forms. So we have all kinds of forms. We're just going to look at a few of them. So we have a form here called Employee Details. So if I double-click on that, it brings me up a nice-looking form. And you might recognize these fields, and these are the same fields that were in that employee table. So this form is based on that employee table, and it's just showing it in a very nice manner. So if I notice also on this form that what's better than looking at the table is I have a nice heading up here, and I have some buttons available to me. So I'm going to click on this button, Save and New, and I'm going to actually create a new employee. So I'm going to add Jim Miller, and he works for, we are the XYZ accounting firm, and he's a senior accountant. So if I do Save and New, I can exit out of this form, and remember that form was based on the employee table, so if I go back up to Tables and open Employees, sure enough, that name, Jim Miller, or that record, has been added to the employee table. So instead of the user having to look at this table view, they can look at that nice form. Okay, let's go back to our forms, and we'll see that we have another form called Employee List. This is very similar to just the table view of looking at the table, but we have a few other items available. One is a nice header. Another are buttons available. And another thing that we have is we have these column headings that we can do several things with. On this form, we can sort. So if we actually click on any field, we can sort alphabetically from A to Z. I can use that sort again to sort Z to A, and I can do that with any column. I can also filter. So if I want to click this, right now it's showing me every last name. So if I only want to see Miller and Bowman, I can take off my Select All and say I just want to see Miller and Bowman, and it'll filter my list for me very nicely. So if you were looking for everybody that was from Lexington, you could filter it. Or if you wanted everybody that first name was Mary and you couldn't remember what her last name was, you could filter the list and find what you need. When I'm through filtering, I can do Clear Filter, and all of my records come back. Another thing that I can do here is I can adjust my column width if I can't see all of a field, or if I want to make a field a little bit narrower to see another field, I can adjust those at will. Last thing I want to show you on this form is we have links over to the left, and these links are the ID numbers for the employee. And if we wanted to see the detail for Harry Miller, for example, over to the left, we have a 4 with an underline, and you might see that it's kind of in an orange color. That means it's a link. So I'm going to click on that link, and it takes me to his detail record. This is the same form we looked at a minute ago, and this simply has the detail for Harry Miller. I'm going to close that, and it brings me right back to this form. So let's say I want to modify this form just the way that I went to the design view of the table and looked at how that table was set up. I can right-click here and go to the design view of this form. And without looking at all the different detail here, I'm just going to show you very simply, if I don't like this picture at the top, I can click on this picture, I can take it off, I can move this over, and when I go back to form view, I've taken the picture off. I can change the colors, I can change the fonts, I can change the widths of things. I can really pretty much modify this screen to look however I want it to look. It's asking me if I want to save changes to the design because I did take out that picture, and I'm going to say yes. So we've looked at tables and we looked a little at forms. So now let's move down and look a little at reports. So we have some reports available to us, and the first one we're going to look at is Employee Address Book. So I'm going to double click to open that up. And the way a report is different from a form is a report is something that typically you would want to print out and look at. It's a list. It's not editable, whereas the form is where you're inputting information. It's simply displaying information. So this took everybody that was in my employee address book. It sorted it by the first letter of the last name, and it put it in this format that someone had designed for this report, so that all the B names are under B and the M names are under M, so forth and so on. I'm going to close that and let's look at another. There's another report called Employee Phone Book. This is simply taking that same information, only this time they selected name and phone numbers and they left out the addresses. We have another report over here called Open Calls. It looks a little different. It's just the calls that are currently open. So this form, or this report, I'm sorry, is based on the calls table. So this shows me who the call is for, who it was assigned to. And remember before we picked the status, there's the status there. So again, I could pick any columns or any fields that I want off of that table to put on my report, but these are the ones that were already chosen. So those were all the open calls. Then what they did is they created an open calls by assigned to. And what this did is they simply sorted by the person each call was assigned to, and they did a little subtotal at the end. So Mary Smith, she has one call assigned to her. Her subtotal is 1, none are overdue. Susan has 2 calls that are waiting for her. There's 2, and 2 are overdue. Harry had 3 calls, none are overdue. 2 for John Bowman, and then at the end there's a grand total. There was a total of 8 calls with 2 overdue. So again, these reports are very flexible. They don't just have to be columns across. There's a lot of subtotaling and totaling that you can use. We're going to look at one more, and that is open calls by status. So these are the same calls that we looked before, but we have active calls and resolved calls. So if that's something you were looking at, someone says, I want to see all the active calls open right now, then you can have a report such as this. Okay, so we've looked at tables, and we've looked at forms, and we've looked at reports. So this is all well and good that we have these nice forms to use, but for a user, it would be very difficult for them to come in and look over here. I don't even know where to start. I don't know what to do. So what I did is I created a menu, and I called it Main Menu. So this is simply another form. And this particular form, I'm going to close my objects box. This particular form, it just has buttons on it. It's not actually based on a table. It's just a simple form that has buttons, and each button is linked to a particular item over here to the objects. So this edit call list is actually linked to this call list form over here. So if I click on edit call list, it opens that form for me. When I'm done, I click the X, I'm back to my menu. This edit customer list is linked to this customer list form over here. So when I click here, it gives me my customer list. What happened for the reports is I had quite a few reports that were available, so I decided to make a second menu for the reports. So I have a button here for Go to Report menu, and that brings me up another form that just has buttons for each report. So each of these buttons are simply linked to the reports over here. So we have a call details button, and it's linked to the call details report. So if I click that, this is a little different type of report. Here it shows me that call 1 is for Jones Corporation, and then here's all the detail about that call. Call 2 is for Adams Furniture, and here's all the details. This is a little bit of a different report than just looking at things in columns across. So all of these buttons are simply linked to these different reports over to the left. So here's the open call list that we looked at before. So we have this report menu. If I hit close, I'm going to go back to my main menu, and I can set up this button, close, from the main menu. I can have it so that when they click close, it closes access entirely. I can also set up this database so that when someone opens the database, everything's closed and all they're seeing is the main menu. They don't have to be seeing all this stuff that they don't really need to be into, looking at the tables and the forms and reports. You can have it just start right out and open up the main menu, and that's what most people choose to do. So one of the things that I mentioned before is the fact that Access can interface with other Microsoft products. So what I'm going to do is I am going to open the employee list. And I notice at the top that I have several choices for me, and this particular choice says add from Outlook. So if I wanted to add someone from my Outlook contacts into this employee list, then I can have Access interface or work with Outlook. So that's what I'm going to do, is I'm going to click add from Outlook. I made me a sample person. This person's in my contacts list. This person's name's Sally Simpleton is what I named her. So I'm on her. She has been added to my ad box. I'm going to do OK. And now Sally Simpleton has been added into my table very quickly. So if she had name and address, phone number, business phone, and all that, those would have been added into my database. So that's one way that you can interface with Outlook. Another way, which is very nice, is something that was set up in this database using collect data. And what this is going to do is it's going to go out to someone that's in my table and ask them to update their own information. So if you'll notice, I'm actually in this employee list. This is my real email. And if I actually go and look at all of my detail, I'll see that that's all I have is my name and my company name. I don't have any address. So what I'm going to do is I am going to use this collect data, and I'm going to send myself, and assume that I'm really some other employee, a form to fill out to update their own information. So I'm going to click on collect data. It starts a wizard for me, and this simply tells me what the wizard's going to do. But I'm going to click next. I'm going to pick that I want it to send an HTML form to that person. I do not want to collect new information only. I want to update existing information. And now it looks at all those fields and says, hey, what do you want this person to update? So I am going to pick company, last name, first name, email address, job title, business phone, and then I'm going to jump down and I'm going to pick address, city, state, and zip. So those are the only fields I want. I'm going to click next. It says to have the replies automatically processed when they arrive in your mailbox and the data added to your database, select this. So I'm going to select that option. It asks me where the email field is, which field is it that I want that has my emails in it, and that is the right field. This says, hey, this is your email message. What do you want the subject line to be? So I'm going to change my subject line So I've changed my message. This is simply telling you that you can manage your replies with a button that's going to appear. Now this is going to allow me to look through my list and tell the computer who I want to send this update to. So I'm going to take off my select all. I'm going to select myself and do send. And what that did is it sent me an email, and I'll get it in a few minutes. So while we're waiting on that email to arrive for me to update my information, I'm going to show you a couple of things that are up here on the ribbon. The first thing that I want to look at is we have a tab available called External Data. And you'll see that this tab is divided into importing and linking items and exporting items. So we have available to us that we can import information from Excel very easily or from another Access database. We can import from a text file, and there's all sorts of different file types that you can import from. There's also an export group that we can export to Excel or a text file or Access. So what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to close both of these. I'm going to open my employees table, and I'm going to export this information to Excel. So I'm going to click on Excel. It asks me where I want to put it. I'm going to browse, and I'm going to go to my desktop. I'm going to call it My Employees, if I could spell. Export data with formatting and layout, yes. Open the destination file after the export is complete, yes. So that exported all of my information. So now I have that in Excel, everything that was in that table. So it's just as easy to import information from Excel to make a table as it is to export and make a spreadsheet. So I'm going to close Excel. I'm not going to save that. I'm going to go back to my email, and I'm going to see if I have my email. So here's actually the email that I sent myself, asking me, here's the message that I put in my subject line. I'm going to open that up. Here's the message that I put in my message. Thanks so much, Carla. And it says, here's the information. Please update your information. So I'm going to reply to this. I'm going to go down here, and I'm going to update my job title. And I'm going to update my address. So it says, are you done? Click send to send your information. So I'm going to send that information. It's going to go back to me, the person who sent it, and in a minute we're going to check that out and see if my information was updated. The only thing that we really didn't talk about is queries, so I just briefly want to talk about queries. So we see we have a query section, and what a query does is it's a way to filter your data. So I can go up to the top and create myself a new query. I can do create, go to query design. It says which table do you want to do a query on. So let's pick employees again. And the way this screen is devised is at the top are the tables you have a choice of, and at the bottom are the fields you want to select. So let's say that I want to see first name, last name, job title, and business phone. So I've picked my 4 columns. I can go up to the top and click on View, and there are my 4 columns. I selected first name, last name, job title, and business phone. I can go back to Design View, and I can add that I want to see home phone. Now I've got home phone listed. But one of the great things you can do with queries is you can filter your information. So you see here that I have job title. for each of my employees, and I have quite a few senior accountants. So let's say I just want to see senior accountants. Under job title, I have a line here called criteria, and I can simply set my criteria to senior accountant. And now when I run it, I'm only looking at senior accountants. Let's say I want to see all accountants. I had senior accountants and junior accountants. I can use a wildcard, which is a star, to say that I want to see all accountants. So imagine if you have a list of products, you could say, give me all products that were purchased after this date that were over $100. Or I want to see all employees that were hired in May of last year that I don't have a home phone for. So there's all kinds of creative ways that you can use a query. So I'm going to close this query, and I'm not going to save it, and I'm going to look at some of the existing queries over here. So there's one called Open Calls. I'm going to open that in Design View. So this looks very similar to the screen I had before, only instead of employees being at the top, it's pulling from something called Calls Extended. So what this is doing is this is really based on the calls table, and there was another query that was based on the calls table, and they called that query Calls Extended, and this is a second query based on the first query. But basically what I want you to see is that for open calls, which is what they called this query, they were looking at the status field, and they say here, I want all calls that do not have closed in the status field, or it can be empty. So it just doesn't want the word closed or is empty. So if I look at that, I scroll over, sure enough, I do not have any status of closed. So what I want you to realize is that this query, Open Calls, is what this form is based on. So the report, this report called Open Calls is based on this query called Open Calls that is actually based on this query called Calls Extended, which is actually based on this table called Calls. So we've got a report that's based on a query that's based on a table. So let's look at this Open Calls report. So this is simply the information that was in that query, and they just showed it. They just showed it in a nicer form that you could print out. Okay, so let's go back and look at our table, our employees table, and let's see if that email has come back. Actually, I don't want to go there. I want to go to my nice form. I'm going to go to my main menu. I'm going to edit my employee list. I'm going to look up myself. And sure enough, there's that information that I sent back in that email where I input my street address and my job title. So those are just two very simple ways that you can link to Outlook, to use Outlook. So I'm going to go back to my PowerPoint presentation, and I want to talk about these particular bullets that I talked about in a minute ago, because I think they'll make more sense now. We talked about Access being a Microsoft product, and one of the good things about that is that it will interface with other Microsoft products. So we saw it, how it interfaces with Outlook and Excel, that it is an easy-to-use tool for quickly creating an application. So as I said, I used a template. It gave me a good basis. I did a little tweaking and made it my own, and I moved things around to be the way I wanted. So in a couple of hours, I have an application that's going to run my contact list. Now we see what a relational database is, how all of these tables will relate together, and the graphical user interface, simply meaning that it has those really nice forms that we can use for the user to input information. And then lastly, easily sharing this application with our colleagues so that, as I mentioned before, we could put this out on a shared drive and two people could get into the same file at the same time. Like, you can't do that with Excel, I don't believe. But you can both get in the same file, be updating the tables at the same time. It does have a record locking feature that when I'm in a record and updating a record, then another person can't get in and update that record until I'm through with it, until I get off the record. So it does have that feature. So that's so these are just some things to think about when you are thinking about what Access is. I hope that this has given you an understanding, a better understanding of what a database is and what Access is and how it's different from using Excel. And the only thing that I really didn't mention before is Irma mentioned that a lot of you use QuickBooks, and you can use Access with QuickBooks. There is no, within Access, there is no way to import and export data into or out of QuickBooks. However, you can use Excel as an intermediary file. So if I'm in Access, I can send something to Excel, and then I can get into QuickBooks and import that into QuickBooks. Same thing the other way around. I can export something out of QuickBooks to Excel and import it into Access. I have also found some other products on the internet, and I know of one in particular that I have a client using, and it is a purchase product that is like an add-in to Access so that you can actually link Access to your QuickBooks tables. And do you remember how I opened those tables and looked at the employees? Instead of employees, it would have your QuickBooks tables listed right there, and you could use those in queries and make custom forms and do whatever you want to link to the QuickBooks data. So I do know that that is available. And if that's something that you might be interested in, if you would like to contact me, I can give you more information on that. So I think that this is probably a good time if anybody has any questions. I have a few more things to talk about as far as what my company offers, but if you have any questions about Access.
Hi, Carla. This is Irma. We've been talking back and forth about how is the integration of Microsoft Access with QuickBooks. And as soon as we talked earlier before this meeting, and I also checked with the QuickBooks about the capability of import and export for QuickBooks. And you were correct. There is, we have to transfer Microsoft Access to Microsoft Excel first. So on the QuickBooks, there is 3 files that I so far know that we can transfer or import or export from QuickBooks, which is Excel file. And the second one is text file. And then the last one is we call IIF file. So that's so far QuickBooks that can do. So another thing that I'm going to ask you is basically what kind of project that you have been involved with Microsoft Access, but you can answer that later. I want you to continue your presentation, and then you can answer my question later. And do you have any question here?
Well, we were checking. We just wanted to see how, if that data could integrate with a calendar, like be put on a calendar.
Okay, I'm gonna have to turn it off.
Oh, you have to turn it off.
Yes. Okay. So that is Kevin Miller, and then he's with the plumbing company. So his question is, can you use the Access, Microsoft Access, integrate, like we need to have like a calendar, like for scheduling? So that's his question. So I'm going to turn it over to you.
Okay, I've never had anybody request that, but I'm sure that since Access, I've done many things to interface with the contact list, and I know that if you're ever in the calendar view of Outlook, you can do a list view, and it's actually just a table with columns. So I'd be happy to look into that for you and give you an answer on that, but I feel 90% certain that it would have no trouble interfacing with the calendar. But I don't know that for sure, so that's something I'd be happy to look up for you if you're interested.
Okay. Maybe what we can do probably for the last, we have like 10 minutes more for the presentation. What we can do is, would you explain what do you have, what kind of project that you have done by using this database, and please feel free to explain about what kind of project that you're dealing with the business, with the ExecuTrain in Kentucky. So that might be great. Thanks.
Okay, first of all, I can talk about a few of the databases that I've created for people. I work with a publishing company that was actually creating a reference manual, and the first thing that I did for them is I created a database that for each section of the book, like let's say that you had an entry for yourself. Let's say that this book was a list of all accountants in Kentucky. What I did was I created some code in the background that would read through their database table that had everyone that was listed in the book, and for every record it would read a record, look at that person's email, open up Outlook, create them a Outlook message that had a subject line that we had set up to say please update your information, had a list of not a list but a subject in the actual detail, the subject detail, and then we had created a PDF of their actual record. We added that as an attachment to that Outlook message, and it sent that first email. So what it would do is it would read a record, make the attachment, make the message, send the message. Read the next record, make a PDF, make the attachment, create the Outlook message, send that message. So they had thousands and thousands of updates that needed to be done for this book. So we had that all automated, and then when people brought their information or sent their information back, I created a database so that they could, or not a database, but a form that they could go in based on the ID number of each of those returns and update the information when it came back. So that was the first thing that I did for them. And in the meanwhile, they had their other office who was dealing with their sales of their books. So I created a complete accounting system for what they needed as far as every order that was taken was input in, every charge that was on there, every money that was received. You know, they would put in the date and who received it and the check number, the check amount, and then they would have at the end of the month, they would have a billing report, and it would go out and either create statements for everyone or overdue billing for everyone that had a big overdue at the top that would show the status of each person's account that had ordered a book. And it would also print out packing slips. So what we did was when the book actually was finished, one particular book was finished and they were ready to be shipped, we would use a report to print out packing slips of everybody who had paid for that book at that time, and they would use those as packing slips, and as they packed them, then at the end of the day, they would go through and check mark all the ones that got shipped, and it would update a shipped date to all of those people, so it would update everything at one time. So that's the kind of invoicing, accounting thing that can be done. I work for an insurance company, and it, without going into a lot of detail, just handled all of their insurance policies. They had prospective customers, but mainly they had quotes that went out. They had a quoting system, and when someone accepted a quote for insurance, created a button that turned that into a policy, had a policy screen, sent them out policy, kind of policy invoices, kept track of all the monies for that too. And the third thing that I think I mentioned earlier is a manufacturing company totally switched gears there, not accounting at all. They did their inventory, so they were keeping up with their inventory supply, and they would have for each inventory item, like a minimum for like a reorder level, so they could print out reports and show everything that needed to be reordered at the end of the week, or they could do usage reports of what got used, how much got used for each inventory item, show me the lowest selling inventory item or the lowest used inventory item, that kind of thing. So there's a lot of different applications that you could use, and the one we looked at today was simply a contact list that anybody could use to help them with their contacts, whether you're an accounting firm or whether you're a firm like us trying to sell classes, or whether you're a manufacturing firm, you would have contacts to contact also. So some of the templates in here, if you're kind of interested in seeing some of the applications, when you go into Access, you'll see that there's all kinds of templates in there that might get you thinking about some of the different things that you could use it for. So I just want to talk about a couple of other slides that I have here. I just made this slide to show some of the things that my company, ExecuTrain, offers. The first thing is we have Microsoft product classes. So we have classes for Excel and Access, Outlook, and all other types of Microsoft products. We also have business skills classes, anything from having good phone skills to how to be a good communicator, how to deal with a difficult boss, that kind of thing, which I'm going to show you a list of some of the courses that we have in a minute. We do custom software development, and that's really where I come in, where I would come in and either help you with an existing database in Access or create one from scratch. A lot of people have inherited databases and they're using it, but they just don't know really what all it can do, and sometimes I can come in and kind of point them in the way of how it should be changed. Sometimes they want to change it, and that's fine, and sometimes they'll hire us to change it. We do all kinds of business consulting, and as an example, sometimes I'll go in an office and watch somebody do their work, and I will give them some suggestions on how they could set something up in Excel or something up in Access to make their life a lot easier, to automate some of their process, saving them time and money. A lot of people don't know some of the functions available even within Outlook. They don't know how to use the notes field. They don't know how to use the, I can't think of what it's called, where you put in what your projects are that you need to do. So there are a lot of different things that we can do when we go into a business to try to find them time-saving and money-saving solutions. I've developed quite a few training manuals for people, and it started out being that people or different companies hired us to, they would get new software. A lot of hospitals would be getting new software. They would hire us to send in a team of people to train their staff, and they would say, you know what, we need a new user manual for this. And so we started creating user manuals, and now I've done them for all sorts of clients. My last one is I did one for Kingland. And I've done quite a few things for Churchill Downs too. So a couple of restaurants had some employee user manuals, just an employee handbook, had nothing to do with computers at all. So we'll do that. I also create custom e-learning courses. So you know how you can take an online course that, how to set up a file in Outlook. And so we would create an online course for that, saying, hello, here's a course on how to do such and such. Click next to get started. And you click next, and each screen would either give you information on how to do that, or maybe a screenshot of someone clicking on the screen doing particular things. So that's an online e-learning courses. And that ties into a learning management system. We do have an e-learning management system, which you can purchase to use these online e-learning courses. And what a learning management system is, where you put all your employees in. They are considered students. You put all the core courses in there that you want them to take, either online, or they could even be instructor-led training classes that you just want to set up days and times. You assign classes to the students, and then when they log in their account, it says, hey, you have 3 classes you need to take. 2 are online, 1's an instructor-led. Please click here and pick a date to take this class, or please click here to start the online class. And of course, it tracks them, and then as a manager, you can get in and look and see who took the courses that they were assigned and who didn't, that kind of thing. So this is just a list, just to give you an idea. Here are some upcoming classes for the next quarter, and this is by no means an exhaustive list of everything that we do, but you'll see we have access classes. Then we have some business classes, advanced interpersonal communication business skills. We have better business writing, business problem solving, change management business skills, conflict management business skills. Then we get back to some Microsoft. We have Excel. We have some other things there, Frontline, InDesign, QuickBooks. We even do courses in QuickBooks. But we have all types of courses available. So every quarter we create a list of classes that we think will be courses that people will want to take. But all throughout the month, people call in and they request classes. So if you want to take an Excel intermediate class, then give us a call and we'll just create a new class for you. And then if other people happen to call in and want that same class, they'll be added to that class. We do a lot of classes with 1 and 2 people. We can come on site and do a class at your location. Some people want a class here so that they can get out of the office, and they might want to have 20 people come. So we do have facilities here with classroom, with computers set up, so that you can have classes here. So that's really the end of my presentation. This is my contact information again. So if you are interested in either finding out about classes or some more of the things that we do, or you want to talk to me, or you have any questions about anything that I talked about today, please feel free to contact me with this information. So I think that's it, Irma, unless you have other questions for me.
Hi, Carla. Thank you so much for all of the presentation that you did. I thank you so much, especially to you, for making this happen. And I also want to thank you, the executive of the ExecuTrain, which is Grinda Frankie. And I think it's a very good session here from the ExecuTrain. And I would also try to extend the invitation for ExecuTrain and all of the staff, if you want to come to attend the meeting, even though you're not presenting. So you will never know that you might have something, some project or something that you can get by networking with us. So I just want to make sure that I'm extending the invitation to your business. And then I'm also appreciating our opportunity to work together for today. And I think pretty much it. So I'm going to turn it over to you, and then we just say bye-bye. Here we go.
All right, it's been very nice to be allowed to do this presentation. Thank you guys very much for listening to me, and I hope to hear from some of you soon.
Thank you so much. You have a good evening.
Thank you, Irma.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.